All right, guys, I think we're live. Sorry for the delay. It's been a couple weeks since I did this. I'm a little rusty. I actually started the live stream broadcasting to a private video that nobody could see. So I had my settings, my wires crossed here. So I believe I am live on the correct stream now. If you guys can see me and hear me, go ahead and put a comment in the live box. And I should see that pop up shortly. I'm going to double check real quick and make sure I'm on the right thing. I don't have my browser open on my laptop, so I'm going to check on my phone and see if I'm actually showing up on YouTube. Or if I get a comment to let me know that it's, oh, I am live. All right, cool. Yep, awesome. Okay, cool. Glad you're here too, Vic. All right, so yeah, it's been a few weeks since I've done this. Oh, we've got a bunch of comments coming in. Cool. Morning from Grenoble, France. 6 a.m. 23. It is hot here in Tokyo, man. It's not so hot today. Yesterday it was like 34, 35 degrees, which, what is that in American units? I always forget. I've lived in Asia for 10 years now, and I'm not very good at the conversion sometimes. It's hot though. What is that, mid 90s, I guess, in Fahrenheit? Today it's less, it's 31, but it's super humid. So my camera is so clear. Yeah, so uh the last few weeks it's been Ash doing these live streams, and he doesn't have the setup. He's in the UK right now, and he doesn't have the setup that I have over there. He was just on his laptop with his, his built-in webcam or whatever. So yeah, I've got a little bit better setup here. I've got a Canon camera, just a basic setup, but yeah, it hopefully should look a little better. And I've got the good microphone. So yeah, we do get a little bit better quality here. Some of you guys know. Actually, I see somebody here that already has the. We just launched our Kanji masterclass, so I know most of the people watching this stream are probably learning Chinese, but I know there's a lot of people in our Chinese audience that are learning Japanese too. So I've sent out a couple announcements now about the Japanese Kanji masterclass. Just launched yesterday. There's at least one person here on the stream that's in it, that's already signed up for it. So it, for those of you who are in the Chinese character masterclass, if you've looked at the Japanese videos and the PDFs, you'll notice they're like way better quality. We've learned how to do this stuff a lot better. Got a better camera now than we used to. We used to rent one from a friend of mine, and we had like a green screen, and it was the camera was pretty old, and we weren't very. I was using iMovie, which is not professional editing software. Now I've learned how to use. We got a better camera. I've learned how to use the Premiere Pro, the Adobe thing, and then the PDFs used to be. I was doing them in Pages, which is kind of like a Mac version of Word. And then now I've learned how to use InDesign, and the PDFs just look awesome. I mean, so we're going to be redoing the Chinese courses in the same style, to get a little bit better quality. I mean, the information is still the same. Obviously, I think the information we have in those courses is really top notch, but the presentation could use with some love. So yeah, we'll be over the next few months. We'll be redoing some of that in the new style. Um, let's see who all we have here. Good mic. Yeah, man, I'm really happy with this mic. I spent like $40 on it at Don Quixote, which is kind of like it's like an everything store. It's almost like not really a Walmart, but they've got all kinds of stuff at Don Quixote. And yeah, they happen to have this little $40 condenser mic, and it does pretty well. It's Aukey or Aukey, Aukey. Yeah, I've been pretty happy with it. I used to use like well, I've been through several different mics. I had like a lapel mic, a little cheap lapel mic that we used that did okay, but then there's like a short in the wire now, so it didn't work. And then I had like it's called a blue snowball, which was okay. I used it for the audio lessons and the pronunciation course, but it wasn't that great, and it also kind of crapped out. So, but yeah, so far I've been happy with this one. I've been using it for about month and a half, 2 months, something like that. And the kanji course is all recorded on this setup, so that's why it looks a lot better. So I guess it's we're about 5 minutes into it because I was a few minutes late. So that I think we've had time for people to show up if they're gonna show up. So I guess I can go ahead and get started. I was gonna show like a sample lesson from the kanji masterclass, but I didn't get it set up in time. So it's on the page. Like if you guys have seen the page with the kanji masterclass, it's on there. But the reason I was going to show this was because it's relevant to what I'm talking about today. And the demo lesson is if you're in the Chinese masterclass, or if you've seen this demo lesson on the kanji masterclass page, or if you've read our blog post called Three Attributes and Three Functions, you'll be familiar with what I'm going to talk about. But um, when it comes to the study of writing, there's three attributes that writing has: form, meaning, and sound, right? So what does that mean? It's like if you think of a spoken word is a combination of meaning and sound, right? It's a sound that you make with your mouth. The other person hears it and they understand what you mean, right? Um, so when you get to writing, writing is like a physical form, a mark of some sort that evokes that spoken word in the reader's head, right? So it's a form that evokes a sound meaning combination in the reader's head. So you can say speech has two aspects or attributes, meaning and sound. Obviously, I'm really simplifying things here, but for these purposes, it's good. And writing has three attributes: form, meaning, and sound. Um, so the reason I was going to show that video um, is that there's a quote from, I think it's from Chiu Shigui, who I'll be talking about just in a moment, but he's a really influential paleographer. In some ways, he's the father of modern paleography. Um, and there's a quote from him where he says, "You always, 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 no matter what you're doing," and I'm paraphrasing, obviously, no matter what you're doing, you have to pay attention to form, meaning, and sound. If you're not paying attention to all three, that's when your chances of making a mistake goes way up, right? Um, so Ash, in the last four live streams, he did a series of four on Old Chinese and Middle Chinese. And so that's kind of the sound aspect. Today I'm talking about form. I'm not going to get into the sound stuff so much, but um, most of what I'm going to be covering today has to do with ancient character forms and learning how to read them, right? But just because I'm not talking about the sound stuff doesn't mean it's not important. And the meaning stuff. Like, obviously, like the stuff that I've brought here today is almost entirely about form. But you can't really do this stuff well without having some understanding of the sounds of Old Chinese, and also of semantics and how the characters were used in context. Um, and there's tons and tons of resources on this stuff, from textbooks to references and in-depth studies and monographs by professors. I mean, to give you an idea, I don't even know how many books I brought here today. Probably 30 or so, and I even forgot a few. There were a few that I wanted to bring and didn't make it into the suitcase. So, but our library, just the part of the library that's currently like not boxed up somewhere, because part of our library is, and part of it, we've got a lot of stuff digitized that we don't actually need physical access to, but um, just the part that I have out on the shelf right now is like 700 books, and it's mostly related to those three aspects of paleography. Then there's other stuff like, obviously, to do paleography well, you have to know about ancient Chinese history. You have to know about philosophy because a lot of the excavated texts are philosophical texts. And so to understand the meaning of a particular character form in its context that it shows up in the excavated text, you have to have understanding of the philosophy of that time. So I mean, there's so many, and there's things like you have to have some understanding of the artifacts, that you're looking at. Um, there's a bunch of different types of bronze vessels, and then there's a bunch of different excavations of bamboo texts, and there's I don't even know thousands or hundreds of thousands of oracle bone fragments. I mean, it's just an insane amount of stuff, and it's a gigantic field. Um, so it's not obviously I'm not even going to come close to touching on everything that you have to know for this stuff. Um, and like I said in the email announcing this live stream, this is not like an academic um, survey of paleography or anything like that. This is like when I was prepping for this, I was thinking of like if there's somebody who is like really into this as a hobby and they need like a starting point or a basic set of recommendations for what you need to get in order to really get started well on it, and then a few like more advanced or further reading type resources. So it's aimed not at an academic audience, but at people who might be into this sort of thing as a hobby. Which there's quite a lot of people I think that are interested in this subject. So if there's any academics watching this, especially any paleographers, this is not meant to be a rigorous introduction. This is just kind of more, um, you know, how to get started and some of the basic textbooks and references in the field. Okay, so with all that, probably too much disclaimer, I'll go ahead and get into it. I tried to bring a few books in English. Um, I have a few. Most of it's in Chinese, obviously. Um, yeah, I did bring a few in English. Okay, good. Yeah, most of it's in Chinese, and you also like to do this field. You need some ability in classical Chinese. Um, like you have to be able to read the Shuowenjiezi, which is one of the books I actually forgot to bring. I had two copies of it out actually, and neither one of them made it here. Um, you have to be able to read that. It's written in classical Chinese. You have to be able to read later commentary, which is also written in classical Chinese. The the excavated texts themselves. Um, exactly what you're looking for. What's exactly what you're looking for? Um, stuff in English, maybe. Um, the excavated texts themselves are obviously like, especially when you get to warring states like bamboo text and stuff, is basically written in classical Chinese, like you would find. Like I did 2 months ago or so, I did a stream about how to learn classical Chinese. So if you need help on that, I would recommend checking that out. Um, but yeah, you need some ability in classical Chinese. You need ability in modern Chinese, obviously, um, or Japanese. I mean, there's stuff on this published in Japanese. I'm not as familiar with the scholarship in Japanese um, as I am in with the scholarship in Chinese, but you really do have to know Chinese because that's where the vast majority. I was talking to somebody actually the other day who are emailing or Facebook actually. Yeah, it was a Facebook message. Who was talking about they're learning Japanese and they want to get into paleography, um, and they don't know Chinese yet. But they want to study paleography at the undergrad level in Japan, which that actually gives you time to learn. Like if you want to do it at the graduate level, you got to know Chinese. At the undergrad level, maybe not. I mean, um, you might be able to get away with it. So, but that gives them time to learn Chinese anyway, or at least get started on it. So anyway, the first book I would recommend, well, not this one. The first book I would recommend. Now, there are other. Oh, no academics. Yeah, yeah. I mean, putting together a really rigorous introduction to this would take a lot of time, but this is just kind of for people that are interested. But yeah, there are other introductory textbooks that are great, but this is really like one of the foundational texts in the field. And I definitely recommend anybody interested in this field of character studies, especially ancient character studies, paleography. 文字学概要 by Qiu Xigui. He's the guy I was talking about a minute ago that I called the father of modern paleography. Um, this is his. He wrote it in the 80s, I think. 1988 is when it was published, but it's still like the foundational textbook. Um, there's a few different versions. There's like the mainland version and the Taiwan version, and then there's the English version, right? Um, here's the English version, Chinese writing, um, translated by two very, well-respected and well-known scholars, um, Gilbert Matos and Jerry Norman. Um, the English version, it might be out of print. The last time I checked, it was out of print, and it was like a few $100s to get a copy. Um, I get frustrated with the English version. It's supposed to be like the most complete version available, from what it says in the preface, because there's some differences between the mainland and the Taiwan version of the book, and the English version kind of brings it all together. And they also worked very closely with Qiu Xigui while they were translating it. The My main issue with it, and I think Ash shares my opinion on this, um, is that the terminology that they use, well, I don't know if I have. Well, anyway, some of the terminology they use is much less transparent in English than it is in Chinese. Um, Maybe that's just because I'm more used to reading about this stuff in Chinese than in English, but they tend to opt for pretty, um, I guess, very Latin based translations. Like, for instance, 会意字, which is a character that's composed of multiple meaning components, right? Like 尖, meaning sharp, which is 小, small, over 大, big. And those are both meaning components. That's a 会意字. They call it a cis-semantic component. And it's, I mean, I guess once you learn what all the different terms are, it's fine. But it's just I find the English version actually a little bit more difficult to understand than the Chinese version. So if your Chinese is up to scratch, I recommend using the Chinese version. If not, the English version is good. I mean, it's fine. I'm being real nitpicky about it, but it is a really excellent introduction to this stuff. You can get Qiu Xigui's collected works, cough online cough. Yeah, that actually I brought one volume. We have the hard copy, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of this stuff is available through various, you know, shall we say, less than legal um, avenues. But what is this? I got the stream working in MPV. What's MPV? Help me out. Um, but yeah, I'm sure a lot of this stuff is probably easy to find PDF copies of online. Um, there used to be, when I was in grad school, there's a site called like I Ask. I think the site's still around, but they had like a download area, so I forget exactly what it was called. There's a few different sites actually, and there were just tons of books available for download in this field. Um, those sites have been taken down. I guess 7 years ago or so, 8 years ago maybe, China started cracking down on copyright violations and stuff. So it may not be as easy to find as it used to be, but I'm sure a lot of it is pretty easily available. Um, so okay, so that's the intro, and I would recommend anyone, if you're interested in this stuff, you want to start there. You should also get a copy of the 说文解字. It has its problems. We've written about that a lot. We've probably mentioned it in some of our videos. It's got its problems, but it's still essential for work in this field. It's always a starting point. The thing is, you don't want to rely on the Schwollen. I'll get to it in a minute, but there's some easily available reference works that are that you can use to cross-check to see, if there are any known issues with the Schwollen's explanations. I'm gonna put my phone away. Sorry, guys. This kanji course launch, my phone has been blowing up for the last 36 hours, so um, I'll put it over there so I'm not distracted by it. Yeah, I would recommend getting a copy of the Schwollen, and this is actually a good introductory book that you can use, to get accustomed to the Schwollen. 怎样学习说文解字? There's also there's another book called I didn't bring it. I think it may be in a box called 说文答问, like 说文 answering questions, right? Um, both of those are good, and they're written at like an intro level. Like this I wouldn't be surprised if they use this in like undergrad classes in Taiwan. It's a really good introduction to the Shuowen and to some of the more essential books and studies that have been written on the Shuowen. So yeah, this is a good one. And I would also recommend early on learning how to read small seal script, 小篆. I'm going to do another live stream on that later, but learning how to read that is not too difficult if you're already fluent in modern Chinese, or literate, I should say. It's not too difficult to learn how to read Xiaozhuan, and it'll help you a lot because, as we'll see in a minute, a lot of the reference books in the field, I'll just show an example. Well, actually, this is not a good example. I think this one may be. Yeah. So, a lot of the reference books will have at the bottom of the page or the top of the page, whichever like character you're looking at, it'll be listed in Xiaozhuan instead of Kaishu, right? So you pretty much have to be able to read Xiaozhuan in order to know what character you're looking at. Now, this book does happen to have on the side here, it has them in Kaishu, but not all of them do. So some ability to read Xiaozhuan is super useful and not that hard to learn. So that I would say is a pretty good intro to the field. Like if you get comfortable with the Shuowen and you read that 文字学概要 by Qiu Xigui, that's a pretty good intro. The next step is to get into like, I guess, learning how to read the actual texts, right? Okay, let's see. We've got some messages. Video player, I can play YouTube videos, use it to watch YouTube rather than a browser, but it can't handle live streams out of the box. First time joining the stream live. Oh, cool. The more you know. Cool, glad you got it working then. I wonder if anyone has looked into the percentage that the Shuowen gets right regarding phonosemantic characters. Probably. There is a quote that we like to use a lot when people question us about our statements about the Shuowen, I guess. And it's in this book, which I'll get to in a minute, but 古文字构形学 by Liu Zhao. he says in the book, and I'll paraphrase it in English because I can't remember the exact quote in Chinese, but basically, of the characters in the Shuowen for which we have paleographic evidence now, um, 80 to 90% of the Shuowen's explanations have problems. Now, that doesn't mean the explanation is completely wrong, but it's got some kind of problem with it. And Liu Zhao is the, I don't think he's still the department chair. He used to be the department chair of the paleography at Fudan University in Shanghai, which is like basically the mecca for this field. That's where a lot of the top researchers are working. Um, it's an authority basically saying that the Shuowen has a lot of problems. As for specifically phonosemantic characters, I'm sure somebody's done a study on it, but I don't know off the top of my head. Um, so yeah, once you've done like a little intro, that's like an intro course. This is like reading that Choshi Gui book and then getting comfortable with a Shuowen is like basically like what I did in my undergrad paleography class, right? So Wenzi Xue was the undergrad paleography class I took while I was in grad school, and that was basically what that course was. Um, we had to get comfortable with the Shuowen and a lot of different facts about it that we had to memorize, and we had to memorize a bunch of passages from the Shuowen, and we had to learn how to read Xiaozhuan. And we didn't, we weren't required to read Qiu I had already read it, but it was like on the recommended reading list. Um, yeah, that was basically the undergrad intro to paleography class. After that, you want to get into like actually reading the stuff, right? There are a few really good textbooks. Trying to figure out which one I want to talk about first. I guess Gaoming, if you're interested in paleography itself rather than like there's paleography and which is the study of the characters, right? And then there's also excavated text studies. Now there's a ton of overlap, but they're not quite the same thing. This is a paleography textbook. 中国古文字学通论 by Gao Ming, right? Um, so this is just a really excellent intro to paleography. It's not, it doesn't focus on one specific time period like some do. Um, it's 古文字, like anything basically before the Han Dynasty. Or it probably includes the Han Dynasty too. Um, I forget. It's been a while since I read this one. Um, it probably, oh no, it looks like it stops at Zhanguo. But yeah, anyway, this is an excellent introduction, and it has a companion volume, or volumes, 2 volumes. And this is, for anyone interested in this field, this is absolutely essential. 古文字类编. And so these two are meant to go together. Although, you know, you can use this without the textbook, obviously, but they are meant to go together. Let's see, we're getting a lot of comments. This is cool. I'm curious how much you guys commit this stuff to memory, and if you have any tips on how to break relationships down into memorable chunks. Let me come back to that. Can you read this one without any previous background? Andre, are you talking about this? The Tonglun by Gao Ming. I wouldn't say you could read it without any background. I would say you need some background in Wenzi Xue, which is, you know, the books I recommended earlier. If you've done that, I think you can jump into Gao Ming. Variant characters, different scripts, synchronic character use, etc. I mean, I don't personally. This is an interesting question, actually. The way it's taught in Taiwan, at least, um, there is a lot of memorization involved. Like, um, I had to memorize basically the entire preface to the Shuowen, which I'm not sure there's any utility in doing that. Um, we had to memorize the preface and then his explanation, particularly his explanations of Liu Shu, the six traditional ways of forming characters. Um, yeah, we had to write that stuff from memory. But and then so Ash took like undergrad phonology classes. It seems like there's a lot more memorization in the undergrad levels. Um, and he had to memorize like all of the fanqie, like all the characters used in fanqie and how they're reconstructed, from Middle Chinese. He had to be able to do that from memory, and I think he had to do like um, something similar for Old Chinese. And then there's a lot of like memorizing of facts and stuff. Um, it's just like any field. Like you have to memorize a lot of stuff, but then eventually, like, it doesn't really matter if you still have it in your memory. The stuff that you need will be there. And the stuff that you've forgotten, things will jog your memory and they come back. But um, and then some things just stick in your memory just because like I did a paper on mu, um, which let me see if I can pull up a text editor or something. Like I said, sorry, I'm a little rusty. Is this Well, I forget how to pull up the text editor. Um, anyway, I did a paper in grad school on this character, and it's like I'll never forget it, and I wouldn't have memorized it otherwise, but it's just because I did the work on it, it's stuck in my memory. The same with Jin Tian de Jin. I just did a bunch of research on that and some related characters recently, and that'll probably stick in my mind forever. So I don't I don't personally make a point of memorizing a bunch of stuff as much as like letting the things that need to stick. I just let them stick, and then I know where to find stuff that I need, when I need it. So um, hopefully that answered your question. Uh, Gaoming, yeah, that's how it's written. Um, so yeah, let me get back to the books, I guess. So yeah, this is 古文字类编, and it's 2 volumes. I only brought the first volume. And let me see if I can get real close so the name comes in focus. Yeah, so Gaoming. Um, and what this is, so when I was in grad school, I took a class with Du Zhonggao, and I'm going to get to one of his books in a minute. But uh, Du Zhonggao had a, I guess, a way of explaining it. That there's a vertical, he called it like the vertical aspect of paleography and the horizontal aspect, right? And what he meant by that is the vertical aspect is how things change over time, like the process of going from Oracle Bone script to the modern script. That's like the vertical aspect. And then horizontal would be something that's like focused on one specific time period or even like a specific medium, um, like bamboo texts. That would be like the horizontal aspect. So this, and I'm mostly trying to stick with like to approach things from the vertical because that's the like, unless you're wanting to specialize in one specific aspect, um, I would say everybody needs the vertical aspect, um, because even if you're specialized on or specialized in bamboo text, for example, or stone inscriptions or whatever it is, you still need to be familiar with the other stuff because it's like research results from Western Joe bronze script will often help you understand something from your bamboo, your bamboo text that you're trying to figure out. So everyone needs the vertical aspect, and then some people also specialize in one of the horizontal aspects. Hopefully that makes sense. I know it's maybe a weird way of talking about it, but so this 古文字类编 is vertical. It's very vertical. So you have like at the top, you have Oracle Bone script. Let me see if I can get it to focus. This camera focuses on the face automatically unless you force it not to. So yeah, at the top is Oracle Bone script. Middle is bronze script, and then the bottom is like bamboo or silk, etc. Other media basically. And so you get like an overview. You get anything from Shang Dynasty Oracle Bone script to Western Zhou and Spring and Autumn and Warring States bronze script, and then later, bamboo and whatnot from Warring States period. I think this book stops around Warring States or maybe Qin Dynasty. I don't think it goes any later than that. It may be Warring States. But yeah, I would say this is easy to find. It's not too expensive. It's easily available, so it's and it's indispensable. I mean, it's a super useful book. Something in a similar vein is this, and there's multiple versions of this. We have like a few different copies, and they all have different covers. But 汉语古文字字形表, right? So it's fairly similar. It's set up a little differently. If off the top of my head, I think it's the top row is Oracle Bone, the middle row is bronze, and the bottom no. Top row is Shang Dynasty maybe, middle row is Zhou, and bottom is Warring States. I'm not sure. I'd have to. So most of these books have an explanation of well, not most, probably all of these books have an explanation of how it's organized in the front, but I don't have it committed to memory, I guess. So yeah, usually when I'm looking at one of these, I'll flip to the front and read it's called Fan Li, that like explains how the book is set up and how to use it. But yeah, this is also like really widely available, easy to find, it's affordable. And yeah, highly recommended. And there's a follow-up to that one. I think it's to that one called, and I don't have a copy here, but it's 秦汉魏晋篆隶字形表. So, how would you translate that? So 秦汉魏晋, that's four early dynasties. 篆隶, so 篆is like 小篆, right? Seal script. 隶 is clerical script. 字形表, character form chart, right? It's like a big, thick, I think it's 3 volumes of seal and clerical forms from that time period. Super useful. If you do get that one, I think it's out of print, but you probably still find used copies and whatnot. If you do get it, there's an article written by Qiu Xigui where he goes through the whole thing and points out a bunch of mistakes. And it's like a 40 or 50 page article. So I think what Ash did is he went through that article and marked every mistake from the article in the book itself, so that you don't have to like flip back and forth. But um, it's a really useful reference. But you do have to cross reference it with that article. Um, yeah. So okay, trying to think about what I want to go to next. I have just a ton of stuff here. So that those two books I just recommended, these two, um, they're good for an overview. They're not gonna show you all the different forms that there are from those types of scripts, but it will give you like an overview of what the character forms were like from Oracle Bone, Bronze Script, Bamboo Script, etc. Um, and but then there's tons of books that are more specialized, and some of them get. I mean, even so, there's a type of book that we use a lot called Wenbien, and it's I have one here. This is Qin Wenbien, right? And it's by Wang Hui. And I'll put all these books in the notes later. Um, so this is just a bunch of Qin forms, right? So that's it. It's one specific time period, and it's multiple different types of scripts. So there's bamboo script, there's bronze, there's stone, there's seals. Um, so this is not as specialized as they get for sure. There's some that are like there was one I meant to bring, which is like there's an excavation of bamboo texts from that. It's like I guess it was first published at Tsinghua Daxue, which is why it's called like Tsinghua Daxue Cang Chuzhu Shu, I think is right. So it's a collection of these bamboo excavated texts from Chuguo, published at Tsinghua Daxue, and we have a Wenzi Bian that is basically a list of all the different character forms for each character that show up in the first three volumes of that particular excavation of bamboo strips. So that's pretty specialized. I didn't bring many that were that specialized today because I'm trying to keep it as general interest as possible. Uh, but just know if you want to get into this stuff really deeply, there are really specialized stuff out there. Let's see. Clerical script is close to current forms. Yeah, clerical script is fairly easy to learn how to read. There's some weird stuff in there, like you'll see some really odd character forms sometimes. But it's mostly for modern people. You can mostly read it without any like real study required. Like there will be some forms that trip you up, but yeah, most modern people can read it pretty well. Can't wait to send this video. Those people making claims about etymology, but clearly haven't done any research except for looking at dictionaries. Yeah, there's a lot of those. I get a lot of like, but look what Wiktionary says, and it's like, so what? Like, I mean, there's some of the explanations on Wiktionary are actually good, but then it's like yeah. If your argument is look at Wiktionary, uh, good luck with it. um, so I guess I'm going to switch gears and talk about a few other like. So I've been talking about like paleography as the study of character forms, right? But then there's also you need to also be familiar if you want to go like if you're just into this as a hobby. The stuff that I've recommended so far plus a few other books I'm going to recommend in a minute, is probably enough. But if you're wanting to get more serious about it, um, I would recommend picking up one of these. So this is like a classic intro to reading actual like ancient texts. So you start out with, and this was written in the 80s, I think. Um, it's really easily available. It's really affordable. Like it should be really easy to pick up. Um, so you start out with oracle bones, and they're just like tracings, not rubbings, but like, somebody wrote it down by hand. Um, and then you've got the like translations and explanations, right? So you can go through this book and start to get fairly comfortable with reading oracle bone script. And then you've got, after the oracle bone section, you get into like bronze script, right? And it's mostly, I think there's some Shang Dynasty bronze script, but it's mostly like Western Zhou. This looks like Warring States probably. I'd have to look at it, but it's probably Warring States. Um, I guess it probably goes up to Warring States. Um, Now the thing with this is, like I said, it was made in the 80s, so it focuses on Oracle Bone and Bronze script. Um, it doesn't have it might have like silk manuscript. I think um, the silk manuscripts were discovered in the 70s, and maybe some bamboo. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it. But a lot of the huge explosion of bamboo texts happened in the 90s. Like Guodian, I think, was the first big discovery of bamboo texts, and that was in like 92 or 93, I think. Um, so this book doesn't cover bamboo texts. This one does. This one was published in like 2006 or 2008, something like that. And you do start with, well, there's like an intro. Um, it's meant to be a complete textbook, so there's like a little 100-page intro or something like that to the field of paleography. But I'd recommend, the other books that I've mentioned for that. Um, so this one does start with oracle bone, and it is rubbings instead of the like handwritten copy or whatever. It's actual rubbings. Um, and then you also, when you get to the bronze stuff, your first few bronze texts are also Shang Dynasty. So it's highly pictographic like that. Those are really cool. Can any, I'm sure everybody can guess what that character is, right? It's surprising sometimes how easy it is to read some of this stuff. But especially once you have so it gives you the transcription of what it says beside, and then it has like grammar notes and whatnot. So yeah, this is a really great textbook. Um, and then it gets into like the Western Zhou bronze script, and then getting later and later. And then eventually you do have, let me see if I can flip to it. Warring States, bronzes, and I think, yeah, so this is an inscription on wood, or writing on wood, on a wood strip, from the Qin. Might not be Qin Dynasty, could be like Warring States Qin. I'm not sure. Um, and then you've also got a few bamboo texts. Not tons, but some to get you started. And so this is a really good overview. I mean, they're both good. Um, they're both good. They're both easily available. This one has some more recent discoveries in it, and it's got the rubbings. This one is the classic introduction in the field. Like, if you have Wilkinson's Chinese History, a handbook, I think is what it's called. This is the one he recommends. This is the one that people have been using for decades. This one's excellent though. So I can't recommend one over the other really. They're both good. Um, let's see. We've got a few more comments. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, this is a fun one. Fascinating. Yep. Oh, hey Josh. Uh, how fast moving would you say the field is? How much time do you feel like one spends keeping up with the field once base competency is achieved? Sorry about my eyes, guys. I'm a little sleep deprived from this kanji course launch, so my contacts are dry, and uh, I'll do the best I can. Um, it's extremely fast moving. I mean, it's they're discovering new texts all the time. Like um, when I was in grad school, which was like I've been here in Tokyo for 7 years, so it was just before that. So just over 7 years ago, um, the one I was like, I did my papers on the Shanghai Museum bamboo texts, and on Guodian, the one discovered in the 90s, which I wasn't doing any new work. It was just more like trying to get familiar with these texts and the different problems involved. But then the one that I was starting to get into before I left was Tsinghua, which I think they were in the process of publishing those at the time. They had already published several volumes and they were like finishing up the series or whatever. Or maybe they're not even finished yet. I'm not up to date on all the like different discoveries. But then there was a new one that just came out like last year, and I forget what it was even called. And it was this huge, like another huge discovery of bamboo texts. And what happens is some university or museum or whoever will have these texts, and they go through the whole like process of cleaning and restoring, and I mean it's um like I was saying earlier, there's a lot of different fields that overlap in this, and archaeology is one of them. So like they dig this stuff up, and then they have to have like experts in preserving this stuff, clean it up and get it ready, and then they start taking photos of it. And then usually what happens is they have a small team of people working on it, and they get all the photos, they organize everything, and they even have to like figure out which strips go where, because a lot of times like the strips are all just kind of scattered, and so you have to like figure out which ones go in which order. um and there's, I mean, there speaking of like stuff that gets really specialized, there's books on that. um and actually there's a if you're interested in this stuff, I would really recommend getting, this is in English, but there's a Chinese version available too, um by Edward Shaughnessy, who's a professor at University of Chicago, rewriting early Chinese texts. I think it's still in print, and it's a really interesting, um, I guess, overview. I don't want to call it an overview because it makes it sound like it's not in depth. It is, but it's a very approachable discussion of how the discovery of these texts are like changing our understanding of some of the Chinese classics. And one of the thing, I forget which. bamboo text he's talking about, but there was some controversy about the order of the strips, and if I remember right, and I'm saying this off the top of my head, so I could be wrong, but I think we found out that like a phrase, well, it happens all the time that we find out that phrases that we have in extant ancient texts, like the classic versions that we have of like Lao Tzu or whatever, a lot of times are phrased differently or in different orders or use different wording in the excavated versions versus in the received versions that we have. And so this book is a discussion of that. It's really interesting. It talks about how in the Han Dynasty there were, I think it was two scholars. It was a father and son team that were charged with like making the authoritative versions of all these ancient texts, and how they had to go about it, and the types of mistakes that were probably made and whatnot, and how the discovery of these bamboo texts are shedding light on some of the issues there. So it's super interesting. Um, I'd highly recommend that one. Um, how often do you feel like one has to rewrite basic knowledge? Basic knowledge, I mean, maybe not so much. I mean, it's at this point, there's so much data and so much stuff out there that a lot of things, I mean, a lot of stuff is solved. Like, there's a lot of text that we know exactly what every character says and whatnot, and then there's some where there's like wiggle room. There's room for debate, and somebody will come in. So going back to the process. So when they have the team of researchers working on this stuff, and then they take photos of all of it, and then they kind of the researchers do like a first pass of this is what we think it says, right? Um, so they'll say like what they think each character is, and usually what they'll have, like for bamboo strips, for instance, the book will have, and I don't have one here, but um, it'll have the bamboo strip, so you can see all the ancient characters, and then they'll have it in like modern script beside it. So you have it lined up. Um, so you can see what they think each character is. And obviously there's going to be a lot of discussion on some of those characters, but then some of them are like, yeah, we're 100% sure exactly what it is. But then there's things like Tongjia, which is something Ash was talking about in his last couple of live streams, where a character is used for its sound rather than for its meaning, right? So even though you have the form of one character, if it doesn't make sense in context, if you're reading it as that character, you have to think, okay, how was this character pronounced in Old Chinese? And what other characters were pronounced similarly that could actually fit the meaning? And so there's a lot of debate that goes on. And so once they publish this first initial version, then everyone starts looking at it and reading it for themselves, um, and they start publishing papers on it. But the papers are mostly going to focus on those few areas that there's room for debate, where where we're unsure. Um, do any ancient scripts have mistakes, and how can you tell? Um, that's an interesting question. Kind of. Mm, but if you're thinking of a mistake as like something that's non-standard, right? There were no writing standards at the time. The first writing standard came about in the Qin dynasty. So, which was what, 221 BC? So before that, there's no standard. There's just tradition, I guess, is the way to describe it. And but yeah, I mean, I guess there's mistakes, but I don't know. I guess I just don't really think of it in those terms. It's more about figuring out what a particular character form is supposed to represent. Um, Maybe we have the wrong text for some of the classics. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I mean, it's usually not huge differences, but there are like Ash actually did a paper on three different versions of Lao Tzu. Um, the received, I think it was three versions, the received one, and then two excavated versions, and like compared the differences. Um, and yeah, sometimes the excavated ones, and it's not like the whole text is completely different, but there may be a phrase or two that have completely different meaning. Um, yeah, sometimes. Yeah, it's super interesting. I mean, let's see. I'm getting a little disorganized here. Sorry, guys. Um, let's see. What do I want to go to next? All right, so I did the little kind of readers, these guys. Um, Another thing I would recommend if you're really getting into paleography is these two books, and they're kind of on a related subject, so I'll talk about both of them. So this is Du Zhonggao. This was one of my professors and one of Ash's professors. He took the same class several years before I did, but this is, well, I'm using my wrong hand. 说文传文而行事例. Okay, so this is a study, and I believe this was his PhD dissertation. It's a study of corrupted forms in the Shuowen. Excuse me. Sorry, guys. Um, but it's not just a study of which forms are corrupted in the Shuowen. It's also like an exploration of how corruption occurs. And so he has like six or seven different processes by which character corruption occurs in the ancient script. Um, and so if you're really getting into this stuff, I would say it's not an easy read. The way he writes is very classically influenced. So it can be, as a non-native speaker, it can be a little dense reading. But it's just excellent, and it gives you a whole new understanding of character form evolution, um, in terms of like the process behind how things change and how things get corrupted over time. It's outstanding. Um, the course I took was this was basically the textbook for the course. So it's still in print. Um, it's what 560 NT. So what is that, like 16, $17? Um, should be available on like Sanmin or Bokolai. And it's, yeah, I highly recommend it. In a similar vein is 古文字构形学, um, which I think, if I remember right, I think Du Zhonggao translates 构形学 as like character morphology. Um, so yeah, again, it's the study of not just how characters change over time, but like he gives examples of like, for example, how position changes things in Oracle Bone script, or like rotation. If you have something like for instance, the character ko, mouth, is like if I can sort of trace it in the air, it's like this and then this, right? So it's like shape of a mouth basically. And then yue, to say, in the ancient script is that same form with like a little line in the middle of the mouth, meaning like to represent motion or sound coming out. If you turn that yue over, that's jin tian de jin, which is its original meaning was like to close your mouth and not talk. So the meaning today or now, I believe, is a sound loan meaning. Um, so just the act of, turning that character form over, you go from to say to like turn it over, and it means not to say, right? To close your mouth and not talk. So he talks about some of that kind of thing in here, and process of character change, and just he does really excellent work. So I'd highly recommend, if you're wanting to get into like more advanced paleography, these two books are a really good gateway into that. Um, let's see, character morphology. I like that. Yeah. How early did the characters begin incorporating phonetic elements? Uh, Oracle bone script, I think. I never really thought about it from that angle, but yeah, I think so. Quite early, anyway. Um, let's see. I've got a lot more books to cover, but let's. I think I can do. These are two that are good. Like, if you're just in it as a hobby, I would highly recommend getting these two. They're both easy to find. They're affordable. Um, which character are we talking about? Let me see if I can bring up a text editor so I can. I had this going before, but um, I've changed my setup while I was filming the kanji course, and now I'm a little messed up. So let's see. I'm gonna try to set up a no, that's not what we want. Let's see. All right. So I was talking about ko and yue to speak and jin tian to jin. So if you look at the ancient forms, which I don't have right now, but oh, actually I might, because I did a little. I made a slide about it actually. Let me find that because I should still have that pulled up on my laptop. I have a million windows open like always. Um, so when I said that jin was originally, it meant to close your mouth and not speak. It's the original form of this, right? So um, then it got borrowed to mean now later on. And then also this is related. So this character G um, was like an alternate form of Jin, and basically they were used interchangeably in Oracle Bone script, but it's an upside down mouth. So these are all mouths. This is originally a picture of a mouth. This is a picture of a mouth with a. Now this is not zh, sun. This is yue to speak. Let me see if I can get a font that clarifies that. Um, a nice Kaishu font. Okay, so yue is a mouth with a line in it representing motion. Jin, you can't see it in the modern form, but in the ancient form, it was precisely yue turned upside down. And then this was an alternate form of that same character. Or rather, they were used interchangeably. It's a little more complicated than that, but um, I can pull up, let's see. I do have, let's see, pull it up on Keynote. Three. Oh, that's the wrong one. That's from our kanji course. This one. All right, so you can see this is um, those characters I was just talking about, and you can see how Yue and Jin are basically mirror images of each other, or like one's upside down version of the other. Um, yeah, Ko and Jin. Um, So yeah, that Liu Zhao book, 古文字构形学, is a really good introduction to some of those ideas. And again, it's not easy reading. This was also his PhD dissertation, so it's very detailed, but he just does excellent work. So, what I would recommend, I was about to get into this, for anyone that's interested in this, these two books are really easy to find and they're super useful. This one I talked about a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. 常用汉字 by 继续生. This is, it's sort of aimed at a general interest audience. It's so he has another one which I also recommend, but 说文新正. Right. So this one is for specialists, where he like, it's basically an overview of, or a correction of the Shuowen. And so he'll, for any time that he, well, it's not any time, but for a lot of characters that the Shuowen has mistakes on, he will go through the paleographic evidence and like correct the Shuowen's explanation. It's really good. We use this all the time. It's usually the first one that I look at. If there's an entry for a character that I'm researching, this is usually the first place I look. This one is kind of a sort of stripped down version of that other one. It's intended for a general audience. It only covers like 1,000 or 1,100 characters, and it's much less detailed. But if you're into this as like a hobby, I would definitely recommend this. It's really well done. It's well researched. It's just not as detailed as the other book, but it's really excellent. And it looks great. I mean, they did a really nice job typesetting this one. So, yeah, remember this one from a previous live stream. Yeah, I did. I was really excited when it came in a few weeks ago, so I talked about it then too. So yeah, I'd recommend both of those for sure. They're both really useful. And then I have a few more that I would recommend anyone who wants to get into this like seriously as a hobby should have these. But let me see. There's a few more comments. So why do so many fonts collapse zhi and yue? Is there some interchangeable use at some stage that led to this thorn in everyone's side? No, it's, let me see if I can pull that text thing back up. I need to get my keyboard shortcuts going again, but I just don't have it set up today. Okay, so let me make this font bigger. There we go. Oh, that English, the English in that font is awful. So you can see, I mean, there's a difference. Yue is wider, is usually shorter. In this particular font, a lot of time, in a lot of fonts, the middle horizontal line in zhi touches both sides. And in yue, it doesn't. Also, a lot of times in yue, the top left is left open. So there's some retention of the ancient form in that, but let me see if I can find another. This is kind of a cool font, but it's not the best for illustrating this. Well, in this one they both touch and there's no opening. Yeah, it just there's different ways of doing it. Most fonts will distinguish it. Where it gets tricky is when you get into things like well, that's not too bad. That there's some distinction there. But when you get into like the hey fonts, like the sans serif, let me find one. Oh, like Noto. That's where it starts to get confusing. Like when they're next to each other, it's pretty easy to distinguish, but when they're not, A lot of times you just have to rely on context. But yeah, I mean, you can see this one is a little wider. Um, I don't think they were ever used interchangeably. There was always some distinction in handwriting, especially between the two. So last two books you showed available online, and if so, the website, please. Yeah, they should be available. Here, let me type in. Oops. Uh, books.com.tw. Also Sanmin. Is it sanmin.com, or maybe it's sanmin.com.tw? I forget. I have it saved in my browser, so I don't have to remember it off the top of my head. I think it's sanmin.com. Um, those two, there's other online, bookstores, but those two should have it, and they ship internationally. So, the key to kanji. That sounds familiar. Can you tell me who the author is? I think I've seen it, but um, yeah, I'd have to know who wrote it to remember exactly what it is. Um, yeah, okay, so yeah, those two bookstores, they ship overseas. Shipping price is reasonable, and they should have maybe not all of these books that I'm recommending, but they should have a lot of them. Um, Different stroke order? No, it's the same stroke order, unfortunately. It's slightly different stroke shapes, but it's the same order and same number. Um, Let me get back to the normal view here. Okay. Yeah, so like I said, I was going to get into like a few things that I think most people interested in this field should probably get. They're widely available. They've been in print forever. This is a beast, man. So this is Jin Wenbien, right? Here it is in modern script. Oh, it's not. It's focusing on my face instead of the book. Anyway, Jin Wenbien. This was published, I think, in 1926 or something like that, and then it was updated in the 80s. Um, it's really excellent. So it's a list of bronze script forms. Um, and I think this book costs like $30 or something like that. It's really easy to find. Um, it's if you're near a university, they probably have it if they've got an Asian studies department or something like that. Or you can just get it for yourself. It's huge. I mean, I think you can see how big it is. Um, but and under each form, it tells you um, what bronze vessel it comes from. Now, unfortunately, so you can see underneath each form, it has the name of the bronze vessel. Unfortunately, it doesn't tell you what period the bronze vessel is from. It doesn't tell you, if it's warring states. It doesn't tell you which country it comes from. So a lot of times you have to cross-reference it with other things if you need that information. And I'm sure because this is such an influential book, there's probably a book out there that has every form listed or annotated or something like that. Um, but yeah, I mean, if you need to know exactly what it comes from, what the character form comes from, or like which bronze piece it comes from, I'm sure there's ways of finding it, but it's not listed in here. It just has like a name, has the name of the vessel, but a lot of the vessels have the same exact name. So um, it's kind of hard to narrow it down sometimes. Uh, Key to Kanji by Noriko Kurosawa Williams. I've seen this. It's like a blog, right? Um, I think she has a blog, if I remember right. I guess she has a book too, but I've seen the blog. It's a real traditional approach. Something I've noticed with a lot of people that try to do this stuff is that they'll let me give an example. I saw this on Quora the other day. Somebody was asking about oh 时间的时. Let me pull up my text thing again. Um, somebody asked about. Let me get this into the. Well, let's just do this. Center it. Somebody asked about 时, right? And they were asking why does sun plus temple mean time? And fortunately, there was somebody that got the right answer. This is a meaning component, this is a sound component, right? So this is 时 and this is 是, right? But it was actually originally 吃. Now, obviously, originally it wasn't pronounced in Mandarin, but it originally represented the word that we now write 吃, meaning to hold. So that this component was the top, as you can see, is 是. This is going to become a little bit of a mess, but now in some standards, some modern writing standards, it's written 图 instead of 是. But so 是 is basically a sound component, but it used to be 知, if I remember right, off the top of my head. Anyway, it was a sound component. This is a perfectly fine sound component for 吃, and so is 是, right? And then the bottom is a hand, so 寸. 寸was originally a hand with a mark on it, right? So it was actually originally, sorry, I should say, it was originally yo, which is just a hand, a depiction of a hand, but then a dot was added to it. It doesn't really change the meaning, it's still a hand. So this originally meant to hold, which we now write 吃. And I think there's a few people on this live stream that are learning Japanese and not Chinese. So bear with me. Hopefully, me using the Mandarin pronunciation won't throw you off too much. But it's way easier for me to do that off the top of my head in Mandarin than it is in Japanese. So, okay, so that's the structure. This is meaning. This is sound. And it means time because the sun is used in characters relating to time. It's really common, But somebody was trying to explain this in all sorts of crazy terms, like, well, basically, she was trying to tie all of these different components that had been used in the character at one time or another. She was trying to tie the meaning of all of those into the meaning of 是 and relating it to temple. Right? But temple is a modern meaning of this character. It's not the original meaning, and it's not. If I remember right, I think the meaning temple came about in the Han Dynasty or something like that. So before that, this character form was used to mean 吃. So she's taken the modern form or the modern meaning of all these different components that had once upon a time shown up in this character at various stages and trying to tie those modern meanings into the modern meaning temple and explaining that in temples, because you're meditating, time passes differently, and so that's why this means time. And it was just a really convoluted explanation. And that's something I find that a lot of really traditionally minded people tend to do when they're trying to explain character forms. And I'm not saying that Noriko Williams is doing it to that extent, but I do remember reading her blog and getting that sort of impression where it was like, not every little change that happened had had implications for the meaning of the character. corruption explains a lot of things. Those two books I mentioned a few minutes ago that talk about corruption a lot. Once you understand that, like your temptation to ascribe meaning to every little change that happens over history, that temptation vanishes because you know that a lot of this stuff is just it's coincidence. It happened to happen. Um, and so yeah, I would say that off the top of my head, I would have to like really go through the site again and look, but that was my impression of that. So um, let's see, a chunker of a book. Yeah, that must have been Wenbien. It really is massive. I mean, I've got big hands too, and it's it's hard for me to hold sometimes. Um, let's see. I'm still on the other scene. Let me get back. All right. Originated from a blog. I've only seen the book. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think I was aware that there was a book, but I've only seen the blog. I see people link to it sometimes, and it seems to be fairly popular with Japanese learners. Maybe we can change that and make our stuff more popular. But uh, yeah, it's and I'm not saying she gets everything wrong or anything like that. I mean, there's probably some merit to looking at her stuff, but um, yeah. Oh, stumbled on my old blog. Yeah, it's still up. I haven't posted on my old blog. I used to write a blog called Chinese Quest, and it was it started out as a way for me to keep my thoughts organized, and people ended up reading it. I wasn't writing it for anyone to read. It was more like I said, for me to keep my thoughts organized about studying Chinese and also to have some sort of record of what I did. But yeah, people started reading it, and so I wrote like, oh, actually, the live stream I did about learning classical Chinese originated on that blog. I basically turned one of my old blog posts into a live stream. And I wrote a lot about, I did another one about textbooks, another live stream about intermediate and advanced textbooks. And a lot of that is also on my blog too. But obviously, I haven't posted on the blog in like 7 years, something like that. So my thinking has evolved on some of those things, but a lot of the material's the same. Yeah, Quora do be like that sometimes. I know, man. And this person, I won't say who it was, but she seems to be trying to like position herself as an expert on characters because she's answering a lot of questions recently about them, and she just has no idea what she's doing. Um, it's I mean, her explanation of that was such a convoluted mess. Uh, I started to comment on it, and then I thought, nah, this just I could use my time better doing other things instead of like correcting this chick on Quora. Um, but yeah, do you guys know that XKCD comic where it's like, "Honey, are you coming to bed?" And he goes, "Wait a minute, this is important. Somebody's wrong on the internet." I'm pretty sure that guy wrote that comic strip about me because I really get sucked into that stuff sometimes. I try not to, but um, yeah. So Jin Wenbien, the one that I mentioned, there's a kind of a Oracle Bone script version, and it's not really a version. It's not made by the same people or whatever, but it is kind of the analog to that for Oracle Bone script. It was published in the 60s, 65, I think, and it's widely available. Everyone has it and uses it. Um, Jiago Wenbien. If you guys are familiar with Uncle Hanzi or Richard Sears, and his site used to be called ChineseEtymology.org or something like that, and now it's Hanzi Yuan or Hanzi Yuan. I forget which one it's supposed to be, but um, I don't recommend looking at his site for character explanations, but he actually did digitize this entire book. Every character form in this book is available on his website. Um, so if you need a quick way to reference like what's in Jiago Wenbien, you can check out his website. And same for Jin Wenbien. Now, there are instances sometimes where we've discovered later on that a character form, like an Oracle Bone script form, for example, was explained as a particular character, and then we've discovered later it's not that one, it's a different one. So you can't rely on this 100%. Like I said, it was published in the 60s, and there's been a lot of research since then. But it's super useful. Everyone has it, everyone refers to it, and it's widely available. I got this for. This is actually a really nice version. We have another version that's like paperback and on cheap paper. This one's really nice, and I think I paid about $15 for it. So it should be really easy to find. And I would say any like enthusiast paleographer or even just somebody who wants to have some reference to look at should have this and Wenbien. Um, let's see. When someone tried to tell you that Jewel had to do with people standing on tables to be taller, yeah, yeah. I think I talked about that one in the How to Learn Classical Chinese live stream. Yeah, there's so many. Something we say a lot of times is any character in existence can have an infinite number of um, possible explanations, like that aren't logically impossible. Let's say an infinite number of explanations that aren't logically impossible. Doesn't mean they're plausible, right? Um, I mean, you can make up anything you want about any character and tie it together and make it sound possible to somebody who doesn't know better. Um, but what we try to do is figure out what's the most plausible and what has the most explanatory power. And Ash talked about this last or 2 weeks ago in part 4 of the Old Chinese and Middle Chinese series. Excuse me. Um, about plausibility, explanatory power, and Occam's razor. So, like, we try to approach things from that perspective. And also, you have to think like, does your explanation fit all of the available data? And if it doesn't, there's probably a problem with it. I mean, if there's data that contradicts your explanation, you probably have to revise your explanation. So, um, yeah, there's any character that exists, I guarantee has at least a dozen bizarre explanations easily accessible in English. I mean, it's just, I could recommend some books, but I won't because I don't, we don't want to throw people under the bus or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of crazy explanations out there. Japanese version masterclass is great. I've tried to recommend the masterclass to Japanese learners, but it was harder to sell because it was for Chinese. Yeah, this is something we've been wanting to do for a long time, but obviously we had a lot of speed bumps with getting our Japanese dictionary released, and so we couldn't really justify doing the Japanese course when we still hadn't released the dictionary. But now that we've released the dictionary, and then I had a little bit of extra time while Ash was doing the live streams and some other things kind of lined up to give me a little extra time to learn how to. Well, actually, doing these live streams on YouTube helped me because once I got this thing set up where I've got the camera and the microphone and everything in this room, is a hotel room that I rent like once a week or so. I realized that like doing the kanji course would not take too much time, not take nearly as much time as the Chinese character course did. So I just got to work on it, and I learned how to use InDesign for the PDFs, and they look so much better. So yeah, I think quite a lot of people have been waiting for the Japanese version of the class, and I'm super excited that we um, finally released it. The World of Kanji. Yeah, read the world of kanji. Led me to outlier linguistics, so I guess it wasn't that useless. So okay, I've talked to the guy that did the world of kanji, and he's a good guy. A lot of his stuff comes from pretty dated Japanese resources. Um, so I think the book that he made, The World of Kanji, is gorgeous. He did a really nice job with the design and the typesetting and stuff, and I think that's why he was so successful on Kickstarter. Um, yeah, but I would say his explanations definitely leave something to be desired. I don't want to talk too much about him because he seems like a nice guy, but um, holding you up, returning my early question, how exactly would one use all these books? What kind of process? Yeah, so I mean, the textbooks, obviously, you just want to kind of go through the textbook. These other ones, though, like Jiagu Wenbien, Jin Wenbien, and Guwenzi Leibian, and those types of things, they're basically reference works. So you have like, uh, I don't know, it depends. Like I'm doing this with like an enthusiast in mind. So for me, if I wasn't doing this research, I'd still have these books and just kind of flip through them and look at the ancient characters. I think it's really interesting. But you could also like I really enjoy reading bronze texts. Excuse me, like bronze inscriptions. So like there's readers like this is Shangzhou Mingwen Xuan Zhu Yi. So it's got a bunch of like rubbings of bronze texts. It's like a reader of bronze inscriptions. And it's got like the explanations. It even has like sometimes character by character transcriptions. So it's like a kind of a textbook that can get you up and running reading bronze inscriptions, right? Um, actually, museum people were involved in like museum work, Chinese art history could benefit from this kind of thing. Something Professor Shaughnessy, who I mentioned earlier, if you ever go to the Chicago Museum of Art, all of the bronze artifacts there, the Chinese bronzes, I think every one of them was translated by Professor Shaughnessy. Um, so that was kind of cool to see. I met him a few years ago. He's a really nice guy. He's given me a lot of uh, advice. I was originally thinking about doing my PhD under him, but then outlier happened, and so I ended up not doing a PhD. But we've emailed back and forth over the years, and he's always been really nice and helpful. Um, and yeah, I met him, in Chicago a few years ago. Went to his office and just kind of had a conversation when we first started Outlier. So, um, yeah, I mean, it depends on what you want, what you're, why you're interested in this stuff. If you just want to look at ancient character forms, um, some of these books are good for that. These Wenbien type books like Jin Wenbien and Jiaku Wenbien, that's more for like if you want to see all the different, or not all the different forms, but if you want to see a bunch of different forms that a character may have at a given time, or if you want to see, if you're trying to figure out an ancient character and you need to cross reference with other characters, it's really useful to have this stuff. I mean, we obviously, like for the dictionary, we use the Wenzibian type books to get images of ancient character forms for the dictionary. Um, and we have a ton of them. I tried counting how many we have in the library, and that's just what's on the shelf. It's not what's in the books and I mean in the boxes and what's digitized in our database. It's dozens. I mean, we've got dozens of Winsipien, and we're always trying to get more. Like for instance, we just got this one. This one is super cool. It was just published in 2017 by Huang Dequan, he's the editor of the series. So this is Shangdai Wenzi Zixing Biao. So this is all Shang character forms, but it's not just oracle bone, right? It's oracle bone and bronze. So you've got the top row is all oracle bone, and then the bottom row is bronze, right? So this is Gao, right? And is it Gao? Oh no, it's something similar to Gao. It's also kind of similar to some forms of Tang. Here's Gao. Right. So this is, for me, this is really useful because a lot of the Wenbien that we have is like either Oracle Bone script or bronze. So if you want Shang Dynasty bronzes, you have to go to the bronze book. If you want Oracle Bone script, you have to go to the Oracle Bone book. This has them both in one place, so you can kind of compare the differences. So that's super useful. I had another one in that vein. I'm not sure I brought it. Oh yeah, here we go. So this, sorry, not in that vein. This is the this one's really cool. Shang. Well, let me see if I can get the camera to focus. No, it's not going to focus. There we go. 商周图形文字编. So basically pictographic characters from the Shang Dynasty and Zhou Dynasty. This one is a lot of fun. It it I think it's a little more expensive than some of these other ones. It might not be as readily available. I'm not sure. Um, but it's just really cool. It's a lot of fun to flip through because the character forms are all very pictographic, right? So you can really see like the pictorial nature of the early script, and there's some really complex stuff in there, and there's some really like kind of bizarre. Let me see if I can find one of these. I posted some of these a while back, actually, in the on our Facebook group, um, the Chinese character discussion group. I posted about doing this live stream, and then Jeff Tharson, who's a he's a paleographer. He actually studied under Professor Shaughnessy, and I met him while I was in Chicago a few years ago too. He posted a few really weird character forms just before this live stream started, so I'd recommend if you're in the Facebook group, go check that out. Oh, I can't. Well, here's some good ones. Just real weird looking. I really like this time period of characters. I wish I could find. There are some that look like straight up aliens, and no, I don't know. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find them like quickly enough to not be. Oh look, this is so weird. That looks like a fan or something, right? Like a electric fan. I don't know what it is. Now a lot of these like so usually if we know what the character is, it'll be listed here at the top, right? Like right there at the top, it'll tell you what character it is. But a lot of the characters in this book, we still haven't figured out what they are, right? So rather than listing what character it is, it just lists the exactly the ancient form because that's the best we've got. A lot of the Shang bronzes, you only get one character on the bronze, and so there's no context really. So a lot of them can be pretty difficult to figure out. Here's a weird one. Yeah, so it kind of looks like Nightmare Before Christmas over here a little bit. So yeah, this is a fun one. I recommend picking this up for the fact that you can really see how pictographic some of the ancient characters were, and for the fact that like it seems I think a lot of people get more exposure to Oracle Bone script than they do to like Shang bronze. But the Shang bronzes really bring the pictorial nature of the script alive because I mean, you think they're casting it in bronze, right? So there's, you're able to put more detail into it versus carving something with a knife on bone, right? So, oh, my phone's blowing up. Um, so yeah, a book like this, I think really, it's so interesting. This is Nyo, meaning cow or bull. I mean, that's as pictographic as it gets, isn't it? So I think this one is a really fun book that most people interested in ancient character forms would probably enjoy just flipping through. I really enjoyed just flipping through that one. Um, Man, I am going way longer than I wanted to. Dragon script. Oh, Dragon Bone script. Oracle Bone script. That's what I meant. Yeah. Yeah, we talked about some. Um, oh, and then that he's gone. So, okay. Well, hopefully he comes back and watches the recording of the live stream. Because yeah, I do talk about some, and I've got a few more books about that I haven't gotten to yet. We're already at like an hour and 45 minutes though. I'm not going to cut it short, but I am going to try to get through the rest of these, I guess, quickly. I don't have a ton left, but I do have maybe a dozen or so. Let me see if there's aliens. Yeah, ancient alien fans. There's got to be a History Channel show in there somewhere, right? Ancient alien fans. Um, let's see. So, okay, a few minutes ago I mentioned Jiago Wenbien, and I said it was published in the 60s. There are more up to date books, like references on Jiago Wen, obviously. Um, there's two I want to mention for people that are interested. One I don't have a copy of here. It's in a box somewhere, and we have it digitized, so I don't have a hard copy available. But it's called Xin Jiago Wenbian, so like New Jiago Wenbian, and it's written by Liu Zhao, who's the guy I mentioned that was used to be the department chair at Fudan, and who wrote 古文字构形学, the character morphology book. Um, so yes, 新甲骨文编. We use that a lot. It's super useful. A lot of the books, like, let me grab this one again real quick. Like, so this Jiagu Wenbian, if I can get the camera to focus well enough, you can see those ancient forms are actually, I'm trying not to yell because my mouth is like right up on the mic, but the ancient forms are actually handwritten. So it's not an actual scan of the ancient form. It's somebody looking at the ancient form and writing it with a pen, like as closely as possible. Which, for most intents and purposes, is fine. Liu Zhao's book Xin Jiagu Wenbian is actual scans of the character forms, so it's not a person tracing it. Um, is that book available on the sites you listed? It was. It probably is. Um, if not, like if you check those sites and it's not available, or any of these books aren't available and you're wanting to find it, Ash actually knows a whole lot more book websites than I do. Like, we were actually trying to order some this morning, and I couldn't find them on those sites, but he found them on some other sites. So if you have trouble finding a book, get in touch, shoot us an email. Maybe shoot Ash an email. He'd be more equipped to answer it. If you have my email address, Ash is the same, just with a Ash at the beginning instead of John. Um, the other Jiaguwen book I wanted to, or reference, Wenzibian, is this. Focus things don't work in. There we go. Jiagu Wenzibian, and it's a 4 volume book. It's 3 volume. I've just got the first volume. It's 3 volumes of character forms, and then 1 volume is like the index, where you can look up, the characters you're trying to find, and there's um, multiple ways of looking it up in the index. The index is actually super useful. Um, what I like about this one actually is somebody tracing the forms. It's not scans, but they do a really nice job of. Let me see. when they do a nice job of when a character has multiple common variants in Oracle Bone script, they group the different variants together. So let's see if I can find. Oh yeah, here we go. Well, let me find one that's an actual known character. Okay, here we go. Lao. Lao meaning old. So you can see there's one, and so there's all those characters are a similar structure. There's two, and there's three. So they group, I guess, like forms of the same character together. So it makes it really easy to see when there's like multiple different ways of writing a character in Jiaoguwen. They've got it grouped together really nicely. My stack of books here is about to fall, so let me adjust it real quick. Okay. um, so obviously here I'm getting more into the like I talked about vertical and horizontal earlier. I'm getting more into the horizontal where I'm talking about specific time periods, specific script types. So the stuff I was mentioning earlier is kind of more general. Anybody can make use of it and see how characters changed over time. This is more like if you really wanted to get more into it and have references on specific time periods or for specific, types of script. Uh, Late in Texas, sleep is calling. Yeah, thanks for tuning in, man. Yeah, I know I'm going a lot longer than I always go longer than I intend, but this is a fun topic. So I've got a few more books I'm going to talk about. I'm going to try to go kind of in order from Oracle Bone script to modern, or not modern, but like Qin Dynasty, which is 2,000 years ago. That's modern to me, man. Um, we'll get to that one in a minute. So if you want to get into reading Oracle Bone, like actually being able to sit down and read Oracle Bone script texts, like the actual bones themselves, or decipher them, this is a good intro. Jiagu Wen Du Ban. And it's just a reader, um, where you've got a bunch of rubbings, or not. Well, you have rubbings, transcription, and then you have the explanations. Um, and there's lots of references to where you can find which bone you're looking at, so you can find it in other reference books and whatnot. It's a super useful and pretty comprehensive intro to reading these texts. Um, and I think we have like 3 copies in the library or something like that. We have a tendency to sometimes forget what books we have and accidentally buy extra copies. I remember once Ash bought a book accidentally 3 times and gave me the extra one twice. And he gave me the second time. I was like, man, I already have this book. You gave it to me 3 months ago when you bought it. So yeah, we have a tendency to like to do that. But yeah, that's pretty widely available. It's cheap. That's why I'm saying all that. It's should be easy to find, and it's a good intro. Um, well, I say intro. It's if you're wanting to specialize in Oracle Bone script, it's a good one. Um, this is another one. I haven't actually gone through this book myself, but 甲骨文字学纲要, and I would think I remember looking at it when I bought it. Oh, it's all handwritten. Look at that. So I did a live stream about handwritten or about reading handwriting. Now this is actually written very neatly, as you can see. So it's pretty easy to read. But yeah, there are some books in this field that are handwritten, and sometimes it's not written neatly. Sometimes it's quite difficult to read. So like getting comfortable with reading handwriting is also pretty important in this field. Um, but yeah, this is like an intro to Oracle Bone script studies. Um, like I said, I haven't gone through it, but it seems pretty good from what I remember when I first bought it and looked through it. Um, Another one, and this is good for like if you're really hardcore into Oracle Bone script, this is probably not the one for you, but this is like if you're just kind of into it as like a hobby or whatever, it should be really useful. Excuse me. This is 甲骨文小字典, and it's just a bunch of, it says 字典, but it doesn't really define stuff. It's just a bunch of, you know, Jagowen forms written with a pen. You know, and most characters have like several forms written there. So it's a cool little, you know. Actually, if you're into calligraphy, you know, to go back to that question earlier about how would you use these books, a lot of calligraphers really enjoy writing ancient scripts, and these, you know, these types of books would be like a perfect reference for you know, getting inspiration for writing ancient scripts and calligraphy. Uh, New game-changing oracle bones still being unearthed these days, or has our knowledge of ancient older scripts remained unchanged? So that's actually two different questions. Oracle bone script, I'm sure they're probably still finding new ones. Maybe, I don't know. Actually, I don't know. I haven't really kept up with that side of things, like actual new excavations of oracle bones. I'm not sure. Maybe. Um, the other part of that question is, has our knowledge of ancient and older scripts remained unchanged for the last few decades? Absolutely not. Especially since the early 90s, when, off the top of my head, two major things happened in the early 90s. One being, um, well, this kind of had roots in the 80s, but advances in Old Chinese phonology. So Baxter's Handbook of Old Chinese Phonology was published in 1992, which is a milestone in that field. But it was based on, you know, work that was being done in the 80s, and that renewed or that improved understanding of Old Chinese phonology has really revolutionized our understanding of the ancient script. The other big thing that happened in the 90s was the discovery of those bamboo strips, like the Guodian texts. In some ways, a lot of those character forms serve as a sort of like missing link that helped us tie things together. Um, well, and also like I said earlier, a discovery in bronze script. Like if you solve an unknown character form in bronze script, that solution may also have implications for a later form, like in bamboo script, or you know, one of the warring states. You know, there's several different countries during, or states during the warring states period, and they all had kind of their own style of script. Um, and so if your bronze thing that you've figured out comes from like Yanguo, and then you have a seal from later on in Yanguo, or say you have something from Chuguo, or actually let's stick with Qin, right? So Qin was the state that eventually conquered everybody and standardized the script and got rid of all the other scripts and whatnot. And that's what the modern standard descends from. Um, but Qin writing is not uniform because you're talking about a period of hundreds of years. So you have like, well, here. So this is a companion, or not companion, but the Shangdai one that I showed earlier by Huang De Quan. This is part of that same series, and this is Qin. And the way this one is organized is a little bit different. So the Shangdai one is Oracle Bone script on top and bronze script on bottom. This is, let me think, spring and autumn period on the top, warring states period in the middle, and Qin Dynasty on the bottom, right? So uh, you can, in a book like this, you can see how a particular form changed in one geographic area over the course of, that several hundred-year period. Um, and solving a puzzle from earlier can help you solve a puzzle from later and vice versa, so um, and there's so much work being done on this stuff that yeah, I mean, our understanding of the writing system has changed a lot in the last few decades. So let's see. Still true that oracle bones were only used for divination. Do we know the mythology of such divination practices? That's a good question, and I'm not sure. Um, maybe Ash could address that more. I'm not really sure. I My specialty in grad school was bamboo texts, so Warring States bamboo texts. I'm fairly comfortable with Oracle Bone script, but from like a paleography perspective, not from like reading actual Oracle Bone texts. Like they have their own grammar. We have a few books on Oracle Bone script grammar to give you an idea of how specialized some of this stuff gets. Um, so yeah, it's not my specialty. Yeah, I'm not sure. As far as I know, it's all divination, but yeah, I'm not sure. But you could probably a good starting point for that would be Wilkinson's Chinese History and New Manual. There's a version of that for Plico, and it's also in print. But I would imagine there's stuff in there about it, or at least a starting point. Divinations were communication with the ancestors. I think that's probably right. Again, like I said, Oracle Bone script is not my specialty. I'm comfortable with the character form aspect of it, but not with all the like history and culture surrounding it. That um, current rulers asked the ancestors about stuff and then interpreted the bone markings. Yeah. Um, let's see. So I think I'm done with Oracle Bone script. To get into bronze script, I already showed Jean Wenbien. There's another one. This is good for like Du Zhonggao, my professor, recommended this for basically beginning paleographers. It's a super useful book. 经文常用字典. I'm still having focus issues. Story of my life. There we go. 经文常用字典. And it's another one of these that should be fairly easily available and affordable. And it gives basically for each character, it gives common forms of that character, and then some definitions, how it's used in different inscriptions and stuff. So it's super useful. It's not um, it's not comprehensive, but it's really good for like when you're just getting into bronze script. Um, Oracle bone text grammar as opposed to very early Chinese. How does it differ? uh, a lot. So what we think of as classical Chinese is mostly like um, Zhou dynasty, right? So the like received classical tradition we have is like Shijing, Shangshu, like the five classics are like Zhou dynasty texts, and then you have Confucius, who was spring and autumn period, and then you've got the like warring states philosophers and Lao Tzu and stuff like that. Um, Shang is earlier than that, but it's not just earlier than that, it's also a different culture. So um, we have a tendency to think of it as being like an unbroken line, Shangzhou, spring and autumn, morning, whatever. But it was the Zhou actually conquered the Shang, right? Um, Sorry, I'm opening another bottle of water. Um, so yeah, the grammar is different. The writing is related, obviously, and we do have oracle bones from the Zhou, like the early Zhou period. So they kept the tradition um, in the beginning of the Western Zhou dynasty. But yeah, the grammar is quite different. It's I would call it pre-classical. You know, some of the like Shangshu and Shijing is also kind of pre-classical. Um, Oracle Bone is even more so. So yeah, it's got its own grammar, its own. So if you really want to get into reading Oracle Bone script, you kind of have to learn that stuff too. Um, I'm sure Ash has probably been through one of those books. I haven't been through one of the grammar books. I have, used them occasionally to look things up, but uh, totally unrelated. I don't think it was an unrelated syntax. I think it's just an earlier form. I'm not sure. I'd have to look into this more. Was it the same language being written, or like just a different dialect of the same language? Probably. Um, yeah, I don't know all the specifics on that. Sorry. Scratching my head on how all the oracle bones were lost. Yeah, especially when you consider how many of them we've found in the last 120 years or whatever. Um, yeah, it's crazy. They're all over the place, man. There's some in the States, there's some in the UK, maybe some in Australia. I forget. There's a lot in Japan because they were sold on the black market basically, so they ended up all over the place. Once you reach the horizon, there's always new horizon. That's true, man. I've said before, Chinese is never ending. It is just massive, and yeah, there's always more. Um, so let's see, two books that I would recommend, like, and these are from more a paleography perspective than from reading like deciphering texts. Although, keep in mind, like I said earlier, they're related. So you can't really separate the two, but this is more focused on the characters themselves. Um, 甲骨经文考试论题 by Chen Jian. This is a masterclass in paleography. Chen Jian is probably the foremost or top two or three maybe paleographers working today. Ash has met him a few times. According to Ash, it's literally all he does. Um, Ash met him in Oxford. He went to a workshop at Oxford, and some of the some of the other scholars were going to take a trip down to London, I think, and he Chen Jian. Ash tells the story better than I do, obviously, because he was there. But Chen Jian said he didn't want to go down to London, and they were like, "But why? You've never been before." And he goes, "Oh, I've seen photos." And so he sat in his room and basically worked on paleography. It's literally all he does. But his work is just outstanding. It's his articles are extremely dense, so they can be kind of hard to get through. Um, but I remember the first time I had to read one of his articles for one of the expert entries. It was rough going, but um, it's a masterclass. It's really really good. So if you really want to get good at this stuff, this is an excellent book. Another one, that I can say the same thing about is we mentioned this earlier, Cho Shikui, his collected works. So this is volume one. It's a 6 volume set. This one is all articles on Jiaguwen, right? So there's one on Jinwen, there's one on bamboo texts. There's I forget what each volume is, but um, it's the same. The these 6 volumes are like, and they're expensive. I mean, when we bought them, they were it was $300 for the set. It's out of print now, though, as far as I know. Although, as Haku said, I think it's probably available online in PDF form somewhere. But it's just his work is so good. Um, if you really want to get into paleography, like really, really, I definitely recommend finding this if you can. Um, what else? This I'll just talk about real quick. If you're into bronze script, so like I said, I mostly focused on bamboo texts, but since then I've really gotten more into bronze. I really like reading bronze script. Um, it's just really interesting to me. I like the character forms. Um, this is kind of a classic primer on bronze vessels, not the scripts, not the characters themselves, but the bronze vessels themselves. So, 殷周青铜器通论. Um, and it's I think Ash had to memorize, not obviously not memorize the book word for word, but he had to memorize like what all the different vessel types were, right? I think he had to memorize that for his PhD qualifying exams. So this is like the standard primer. And I think it was published, I mean, it's Ronggung, it's the same guy that did Jin Wenbien. Um, although Jin Wenbien was published originally in the 20s, I think this may have been like the 40s. I'm not sure on that, but uh, it's still in print. It's easy to find. I got this at Wanjuanlo in Taipei, but it should be pretty easy to find. Um, if you're into bronze script, let's see what else. Oh, another one on bronze script, and this is one in English. Um, Sources of Western Zhou History, Inscribed Bronze Vessels by Edward Shaughnessy. So the same professor I was talking about at Chicago. This is a really good kind of survey of bronze vessels and inscriptions. This was Professor Shaughnessy's. Well, I shouldn't say was, is one of Professor Shaughnessy's specialties is Western Zhou scripts. Although now he does a lot of work on bamboo texts because that's what's being discovered in large quantities right now. But that was his specialty from the beginning. All right, guys, it's been 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm gonna try to wrap up real quick. I've got a few more books and then try to answer some questions, and then I got to wrap up. Let's see. Written blog posts about the history of a character's transformation with great visuals and detailed explanations. Would you write a book that does this for every modern Chinese character? I'd buy it so hard. Actually, I think, well, we don't have concrete plans for this in place yet, but we have talked with an editor of a well-known dictionary series, and he's expressed real interest in publishing the dictionary in print. And if we do that, it'll be the expert edition, so it'll be all the 3,000 or 4,000, however many expert edition or expert entries, excuse me, end up in the final version. That would be what's in print. We may do that in stages where first we try to publish the essentials edition and then add the expert stuff later or some. I don't really know. It's not anything that we're working on right now, but it is something that like we've got a publisher that's interested, and once we have enough of the dictionary done, it's something we would really like to do. So, um, yeah. Damages the soul to see how in-depth this topic is and yet watch most people make stuff up. Yeah, I know. And that's part of why I need to like stop getting involved in like arguing with people online about this stuff when I see it. But that's exactly what it is. I see bad explanations and I want to go, no, this is wrong, and you're like, I don't want other people to read it and go, oh, cool, because that's what a lot of people do. They see a certain book about Chinese characters that has nice graphic design work that I'm not going to say the name of, but uh, and the TED talk that went with it, and the people in the audience were like, "Wow, this is amazing! It's so easy." Well, but she's not being. I don't want to say she's not being honest, but what she's saying isn't correct. Um, and so, yeah, I have a hard time when I see stuff like that not correcting the person so that people aren't led away by or led astray by it. Um, but yeah, usually it's an exercise in futility. Uh, 'Cause most people don't know who I am, and so when I try to correct somebody, they just go, "Yeah, well, blah blah blah," and they, you know, cite something that has nothing to do with anything, and so yeah, it's like chasing my tail. Um, Physical version of the expert dictionary would be great. Yeah, I mean, it's obviously it's a few years down the road because like we're releasing an update to the expert edition soon. We'll be adding like 300 essentials entries and probably 60 or so expert entries. And we're really going to try to start releasing those more often, but um, that'll bring us to like 250 expert entries completed. Um, I don't know how many we would need to have completed in order to do like a volume, because publishing the full expert edition would probably be a multi-volume thing. I haven't actually looked at like how many pages it would take up or anything like that, but I would think we'd probably have to have like 1,000 expert entries to do one volume of that. So it would be like, and I'm just spitballing here. Like these aren't concrete plans. This is just uh, what I've thought about when I've been thinking about these things. Is that we'd probably do the Essentials edition in volume one, and then volume two through whatever would be the expert entries. I would imagine we probably have to have 1,000 expert entries or so in order to justify doing a volume. So, but that's just, I'm just spitballing. Love to know more about how someone gets into this field. About to wrap up a concurrent diploma in Chinese. Haven't spotted a path from there. For me, I was at the MTC in Taipei studying Mandarin, and I was trying to decide whether I wanted to go into this field or like Qing Dynasty history. So that's obviously much later than this stuff. I was interested in Manchu and some of the work that they're doing in Qing history is related to like the Qing archives are in Chinese and Manchu, and they've discovered that a lot of times the Manchu version of the document is different from the Chinese version. And so going through those Manchu documents is like revising their understanding of the Qing dynasty. I thought that was really interesting. So I was trying to decide between that and paleography. I met Ash, and he was already doing the paleography thing, and that just kind of, uh, I guess, underscored how interested I was in that aspect of things. And so what I ended up doing is I think it was my last semester at MTC, if I remember right. I audited a class, like an intro to paleography class, like a graduate level class, um, at Shida, and excuse me. And then I really enjoyed it, and so I applied to the master's degree, and the master's program, and they let me in. But the thing was, since I hadn't done an undergrad degree, they made me take some undergrad classes too. So be prepared for that. But yeah, it was just a matter of applying and showing that I had at least some knowledge of the field. I didn't have much at the time. I mean, it was more like an interest. And I had read some stuff like I read Qiu Xigui, Wenzi Xue Gai Yao. I read that while I was at the MTC, so I had some like background knowledge, but um, Yeah, native speakers like Taiwanese people have to test into the program. So there's actually like a standardized test they have to take and get a certain score on in order to get accepted into the graduate paleography program. But non-native speakers, or I guess it's about Taiwanese versus foreigners. Foreigners can just apply. We don't have to take the test. It's a double standard, but uh, I can't do anything about that. So yeah, I was able to get into the program just without any real background. Um, yeah, you got it. So okay, a couple more books real quick, and then I'm gonna wrap up, guys. So this is one. If you're into Warring States uh, scripts at all, bamboo script, bronze script, anything, 《战国文字通论》by He Lini. This is an excellent, excellent textbook. Um, and it's not too long. I mean, you can see it's pretty thin, um, but it is really, really good. And it also, a few of these like that I've shown have like the Gaoming book that I showed. It has like a companion Wenzibian, which is Gu Wenzi Bian, and it's at the bottom of the stack here. So I'm not going to pull it back up, but so that's a textbook and a companion volume. So it's a intro to paleography, and then with a Wenzibian that covers everything from oracle bone to like Warring States. This Warring States script textbook has a companion volume, 战国古文字典, and it's not a 文字编, but it's written by the same author. It's He Lini, and it's basically for any character you look up. It shows all of, well, not all of, but it shows a bunch of different 战国, like Warring States forms of that character. So see if I can get it to focus. It's another one of those books that's handwritten, but it's pretty neat, so it's readable. But yeah, it'll show a bunch of forms, and it'll give citations for each form, and then it has explanations of how the character is structured, um, how it's used in various texts, like in context. A lot of times it'll give you the quote in context. It'll quote the several characters before and after, so you know how it's being used. It'll tell you the meaning. It's really good stuff. We consult this thing all the time. Um, Another pair of books, a textbook and Wenzibian pair, is for Qin. So Qin Wenzi Tonglun, and this is by Wang Hui and a few others. But so this is the textbook, Intro to Qin, and it's actually quite thick. Um, but yeah, it's a good introduction to the different types of scripts from Qin. And its companion volume is this 4-volume set, which I think I picked up earlier. Yeah, Qin Wenzi Bian, same author or editor. Um, so yeah, I mean they go together, and so I actually in the library I keep the textbook um, next to the Wenzi Bian. Um, and I've already shown this one, but I'll show it again. I'm kind of moving through time, right? So we're getting up to Qin now. We went Oracle Bone script, Bronze script, Warring States, and now we're Qin. Although, like I said earlier, this one actually has stuff from spring and autumn in the Qin area or Qin country. This book is awesome. There's a few others in this series. So with me I have Shangdai and Qin, but there's also Chunqiu, spring and autumn. There's Xizhou, Western Zhou, and there's 3-volume Jianguo, Warring States. And these were all just published in 2017. They're really, really good. And this is sort of, I mean, it's related, but it's a little different from the other ones I've been showing. So I did show a couple of like readers: Oracle Bone Script Reader, Bronze Script Reader. There's a series of these. 上海博物馆藏战国储竹书一读本. So this is the Shanghai Museum has a bunch of different um, warring states like Chuguo bamboo texts. And this is a reader of the ones published in volume 1. And it's let me see, it's not going to focus. It's Jishu Sheng. And there's a bunch of these. He's got these for, I think, for every volume of the Shangbo, as they're called. That's the abbreviation. Shanghai Boguan. I think he has them for every volume of that, and also for Qinghua, for the Qinghua bamboo texts. And he's got the rubbings and tracings, and he goes through each text and has a transcription in written in modern script, and then he has kind of a translation, Yu and then he has notes, 注释. So you can get a lot of practice reading these texts. And actually, the Chu script can be kind of difficult when you first encounter it, because there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the Chuguo script. But a lot of the forms, if you're familiar with Xiaozhuan, it's not too much of a stretch to get comfortable with reading some of this stuff. Obviously, occasionally there's going to be a character that just completely throws you off. Some of them are completely different from their Xiaozhuan forms, but I got comfortable reading this stuff fairly quickly after I got comfortable with Xiaozhuan. So, and these can be, a lot of these are texts that you may be familiar with. Like there's Laozi, and there's stuff from Yili, like the Book of Rites, and there's just a lot of these excavated bamboo texts are texts that we have received versions of, like that Laozi and Confucius, and just a lot of warring states philosophical texts that we so you can, if you're familiar with the received version, that you can buy at any bookstore or whatever, then getting comfortable reading the Warring States one, it's doable. I mean, it's obviously there's a lot of characters that are going to give you trouble, but you can kind of get to where you can read parts of it pretty quickly. So these are really fun. They're pretty easy to find. I think there's even simplified character versions of them published in the mainland. And yeah, there's a bunch of them. So that's kind of a fun one for anyone that's into Warring States stuff. Let's see. I've got some more questions. Let's see. 2:30 a.m. Yeah, I know. I'm in Japan, so it's it's 3:30 p.m. for me. But yeah, I know the time's not great for everybody. But I try to do it at a time that I can get set up in time, but still allow some people in the States and whatnot to be able to attend live. So, future video topic: can you discuss the history of Chinese surnames? What determined the relatively few characters that were deemed appropriate to act as a family clan name? I'm not sure that's something we can do, but maybe we can find somebody who knows more about it that can, we can bring them on for like a guest appearance or something. That's something that, I've thought about. Obviously, like there's certain things that we specialize in, and there's certain things that maybe we don't specialize in, but we have knowledge of enough that we can talk about it. But then there's other things that if we want to make a video about it, we can do it, but we'd have to bring in somebody that knows more than us. So a little bit about character evolution made me think of the heated debates about traditional versus simplified and which one is superior is quite silly. Yeah, actually, Ash wrote an article about that. I think on hacking Chinese, where he basically talks about like basically that exactly. Like everyone wants to talk about how there's no heart in I, love, and but what about the whole top of the character that's corrupted in both versions? Like, so yeah, that the difference between simplified and traditional is quite small compared to, trying to learn how to read some of this ancient stuff. Any of the characters created for the sole purpose of being a name? For example, did my surname Liu actually mean something long ago, or was it created to be a name? Um, Let me get my phone. Liu actually did have a meaning, um, but I don't know it off the top of my head, so I'm gonna have to look it up. Yeah, to answer, who was it asking about how much we memorize? Only certain things. I have to look up stuff in our dictionary all the time, even if I'm the one that wrote the entry, because it's so much. So Liu, let me pull up my. Normally I could pull up my phone screen, but I don't have it set up to do that right now. So let me pull this up. Okay, so Liu is composed of. Well, it's a variant. It's a variant of this Mao. Jin, metal, and Dao, knife. Okay, so Mao was a sound component. They don't seem similar now, but um, if you think of characters like Liu, that has that same sound component, um, their pronunciations were more similar a long time ago. So Mao is a sound component, um, and then metal and knife are meaning components, and it Liu originally meant um, a type of weapon or to kill. So that's the original meaning. So yeah, it did have that meaning, and then it was um, I guess probably borrowed for its pronunciation to be a surname, or it could be that I'd have to look it up to know for sure, but it could be that the Liu family or clan saw themselves as warriors. I don't really know. I'm just speculating, but yeah, it did have a meaning. There are some characters that the earliest usage we have is just as a family name or a place name. But you can still kind of surmise from the form of the character that it probably had something to do with, say, metal, or had something to do with cows, or whatever it is that it has as a semantic component. Um, so even if we don't have examples of it being used for an earlier meaning than the name or whatever, it probably did mean something before it was used as a name. Let's see. Excuse me. Yeah. Awful to have kill as a surname. Yeah, I mean, it could be that the clan saw themselves as warriors, something like that. Obviously, it doesn't really have that meaning anymore. It's kind of like my name, John. I forget what it is supposed to mean, like God's love, or I forget what the etymology is. It comes from Yochanan in Hebrew, but I forget what that means. But yeah, I mean, most most names did have some meaning or another once upon a time. let's see. Yeah. So, I might think that. Oh, I was right. Those are OG. Yeah, probably. All right, guys. I think it's been over 2.5 hours, and I got to get back to. We've got this. We're in the middle of this launch of the Kanji Masterclass, and I've got just a ton of email from people asking questions about it that I need to get to. So, um, thanks everybody for coming. Hope it wasn't too disorganized. I feel like it probably was pretty disorganized, but um, in the middle of the launch like this, I kind of had to slap it together. So hopefully it was interesting. I did at least put a lot of books in your face, which a lot of my live streams tend to be like that. But um, yeah, hopefully you guys enjoy it, and I'll we'll do another one of these next week. I'm not really sure what the topic's going to be yet, but we're also, if you're interested in the kanji class, I'm going to do like a live Q&A about that. Um, Probably next Monday or so. I'll send out an email if you're on the Japanese mailing list. I don't want to pester our Chinese mailing list too much about it because I know most of the people on that list aren't interested in Japanese, but I will. I'll maybe make an announcement about it anyway. Um, Glad you guys liked it. Thanks for the nice comments. Could listen to me talk forever. I know a lot of people that would probably disagree with you on that. I remember one time, I'm going to talk a little bit more now. I was on a trip with Ash. We went skiing, and it was like a 4 hour bus ride from Tokyo up to, um, what's the name of the ski resort? I can't think of it. But anyway, 4 hour bus ride. And about an hour and a half into it, and these were all people that we had never met before until we got on the bus, basically. An hour and a half into it, I hear somebody toward the back of the bus yell out, "Ash, stop talking about language." So, yeah, we both tend to do that. Let's see. Studying Japanese for a long time is fairly familiar with this stuff. Would the Japanese masterclass be worthwhile? Okay, yeah, that's a question I've gotten a few times that I need to address in the emails. But if you've been studying Japanese for a long time, fairly familiar. Oh, okay, that is a little different than the question. The question I've been getting is if I'm already in the Chinese master class, should I get the Japanese one? That one I'll go ahead and answer, and then I'll answer yours too. But um, probably not. I mean, it depends. Like most of the content of the course is going to be the same, just adapted for Japanese. There are a few lessons that are specific to Japanese. Like I added a lesson at the beginning about hiragana and katakana, and one about like onyomi and kunyomi readings. And then toward the middle of the course, Ash is going to do a lesson about pitch accent and one about Japanese orthography. So those are the points of differentiation between the two. Um, so if you think those are worth getting the Japanese masterclass for, then sure. But if not, if that's not something you need help with, then probably not. The other things that I would think may make the difference is we're doing the class a little differently than we did the Chinese one, which we may, if it goes well, we may start doing the same thing with the Chinese one, but we just haven't decided yet. Excuse me. These live streams that I've been doing, I've decided to make them part of the Japanese masterclass. So they're not going to be available to everybody. They're like private for course students for the Japanese one. So we're going to be doing like a weekly Q&A live stream thing. So if you feel like that's worth the price of admission, then maybe. But if that's not important to, and we also have like a private Facebook group for Kanji Masterclass students. So yeah, I mean, if it was me, I would say no. But if you think that those extra things are worth the price of admission, then sure. Um, but your specific question, you've been studying Japanese for a long time and you're familiar with this stuff, would the Japanese masterclass be worthwhile? I mean, you'll probably learn some things that you don't know already. Um, and it seems like we've had people from all levels take the Chinese course. Um, and be really happy with it. Even advanced people that are already fluent in Chinese, they enjoyed learning the stuff in the course. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's hard to answer because will you get something out of it? Yeah, for sure. I mean, you'll learn some stuff probably that you didn't know. I think Ash's lesson on pitch accent and orthography are going to be really good. He's been researching this stuff for a few years now as like a side project. Um, and I think he'll probably do a better job explaining pitch accent than anything that's available. I haven't taken Dogen's course. I know Dogen has like a really in-depth course. I haven't taken that, but um, yeah, so I guess I can't compare, but I think it's going to be really good. I don't know. If you have any other questions about it, get in touch. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. 谢谢, thank you. Happy to make it. Wondering about that too. Oh, you've already got the Chinese masterclass. Yeah, like I said, uh, if those things are worth it to you, then sure. But I would say 80% of the course is going to be the same, just using Japanese pronunciation instead of Chinese. Also, it's prettier. I mean, like I said, we've gotten much better at production. So the videos are higher quality. The PDFs are much nicer looking, but we're going to be redoing the Chinese course in that style too. So, um, discount for people. Pronunciation course for Japanese, that is in our future plans. Yeah. I'm not sure when we're going to get to that. It'll probably be late in this year or early next year, I would think. But it is something we want to do. A discount for people who already have the Chinese version. Send me an email. Yeah, I should have thought of that. Obviously, that's something that we should probably do. Um, we do have like a 20% discount right now for an early bird thing, but yeah, I think we can set it up so that if you already have one, you can get the other for a discount. Yeah, send me an email. All right, guys, thanks for coming. I'm gonna go ahead and end it. I got to get lunch and I've got a lot of work to do. So take care, guys.